I want to take just a few minutes here to tell you about a way I think libertarians and conservatives often misread history. Too many of us think we're actually on the road to serfdom. And I want to give you a more optimistic view than that, along with a warning. For millennia, for tens of thousands of years, with few exceptions, the world was marked by despotism, slavery, hierarchy, rigid class privilege, and literally no increase in the standard of living. And then the Western world experienced the Enlightenment, a new perspective on the world, really new, based on reason, science, and belief in progress, and freedom. And the ideas about freedom eventually came to be known as liberalism. Human rights, markets, property rights, religious toleration, the value of commerce, the dignity of the individual, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, peace, human flourishing. And that fact brought about what Deirdre McCloskey calls the great fact of human history, the enormous and unprecedented growth in living standards that began in the Western world around 1800. And I say unprecedented because standard of living in the world had been like this for tens of thousands of years, and then it started to shoot up like this. And these ideas spread to more aspects of society and more parts of the world. They gave Europe a century of peace and progress. The great fact spread from northwestern Europe and America to the rest of Europe, to Latin America, to parts of Asia. Now, liberal ideas were never perfectly realized. When they faded in the late 19th century, we got World War I, trade war, the Great Depression, World War II. Some countries endured the horrors of communism and National Socialism. Mercantilism, cronyism, bigotry and discrimination, political murders, authoritarianism plagued and still plague parts of the world. And even in our own country, in my lifetime, we lived with military conscription, 90% income tax rates, wage and price controls, restricted entry to lots of industries, indecency laws, and Jim Crow. But progress has been happening, and we forget that a lot of times. After World War II, a renewed commitment to free trade, the international rule of law, and constitutional liberal democracy brought about another long period of great power, peace, and prosperity. And the spread of property rights and market institutions to China, India, Latin America, even Africa, has brought 1 billion people out of extreme poverty in just 25 years. More and more of the world is respecting equal rights for people, regardless of color, gender, religion, or language. Equal rights based on our common humanity. And it was our liberal ideas that brought that about. Of course, now we're more likely to call those liberal ideas libertarian. I like the old word liberal. It means something. It's the word that changed the world. But some confusion with it these days, we're more likely to call it libertarian. We've made a lot of progress, but here's the warning: our job is not done. We are now facing the rise of illiberalism, not just disagreements within the liberal world, but actual attacks on the liberal order, on liberalism, on both left and right, with threats to liberty, democracy, trade, growth, and even peace. And so it remains to us to defend the constitutional order of our republic, to remind people over and over of the wonders that America has produced, how rare freedom and abundance have been in the world, and the rules that are essential to their continuance. And in a way, those rules are pretty simple. You learn early in life what I think are the fundamentals of freedom, the fundamentals of civilization. Don't hit other people, don't take their stuff, and keep your promises. When the world follows rules like that, we get peace and harmony and growth and prosperity. And one more idea that you wouldn't think needed to be said in America, and that is that we, and when I say that I mean we libertarians and most of us Americans, are liberals. And liberalism is a universal creed. We believe that all people are endowed with inalienable rights, not just some people. And that idea is incompatible with political ideas based on blood and soil, or treating people differently based on race or religion. And so when you hear self-proclaimed freedom advocates talking about blood and soil, or helping a would-be autocrat overturn an election he lost, or talking about LGBT equality as degeneracy, or saying we shouldn't care about government racism against black people, or complaining about people celebrating Juneteenth as a great day of freedom, or joining right-wing culture wars and supporting politicians who want to use the state to fight their enemies, or posting Holocaust jokes and death threats on Twitter, recognize that for what it is. Speak up, fight back, tell people that's not America, and it's certainly not libertarianism. We libertarians spend a lot of time talking about what we're against: high taxes, unnecessary wars, crony capitalism, and overcriminalization, and treating people unequally because of who they are. We should talk more about what we're for. As our Cato Institute mission statement says, individual rights, limited government, free markets, and peace. But more than that, more than just those institutional words, we're for those things because they help us achieve abundance and social harmony and human dignity and human flourishing. We want everyone to flourish, to be able to pursue happiness in his or her own way. I love one of the great documents in the history of American religious freedom is the letter that President George Washington wrote to the synagogue in Newport, Rhode Island. And there's a couple of great lines in there where he says, "It is now no more that toleration is spoken of as if it was by the indulgence of one class of people that another enjoyed the exercise of their inherent individual rights. For happily the government of the United States gives to bigotry no sanction, to persecution no assistance." We had not fully achieved the extension of individual rights to all people at the time George Washington wrote that letter. But like the Declaration of Independence, that letter was something of a promissory note saying, these are our principles, these are our values, and we will create a more perfect union that reflects these values. Libertarian ideas are radical and yet deeply rooted in the tradition of Western civilization. We have a record to be proud of. We have been fighting ignorance, superstition, privilege, and power for many centuries. And it is to those ideas and that struggle that we owe the best parts of our civilization. More than we often recognize, we live in a world of freedom and progress. Imperfect freedom and imperfect progress, but real. We have extended the promises of the Declaration of Independence, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, to people to whom they had long been denied. Around the world, more people in more countries than ever before in history enjoy religious freedom, personal freedom, democratic governance, the freedom to own and trade property, the chance to start a business, equal rights, civility, respect, a higher standard of living, and a longer life expectancy. And it is libertarian ideas and liberty-minded people that made that happen. We need to fight for those gains, especially here in America, where the right and the left are now battling over who gets to do the most to destroy liberty. I was asked once by some skeptics what the most important libertarian accomplishment ever was. And I thought for a moment and said, the abolition of slavery. Okay, they conceded, name another. Now, I thought if you had the abolition of slavery on your resume, You were ready to meet your maker. But they said, name another. So I thought more carefully, and I said, bringing power under the rule of law. That was the truly revolutionary achievement of liberalism, but it is still incomplete. It's what the Levelers and John Locke and the American founders and the abolitionists fought for. It's what the protesters in 1989 against communism fought for. It's what our friends in Russia and China and Egypt and Ukraine and Hong Kong fight for in circumstances far more challenging than we have ever faced in our lifetimes. But it is what we fight for, bringing power under the rule of law, constraining power, limiting it, dividing it, and making it subject to the rule of law, not the rule of men. But nothing is guaranteed. Ideas we thought were dead are back. Socialism, protectionism, ethnic nationalism, anti-Semitism. In what was once Ronald Reagan's party, we see people advocating something called national conservatism, which is old-fashioned big government dressed up in new clothes. Protectionism, control of private enterprise, scapegoating of minorities. They literally denounce the Enlightenment and liberalism. Some of them even advocate imposing a national religion. And that's why our job is not done. As we confront genuine opponents of liberalism on both left and right with threats to liberty, democracy, growth, and peace, this is our challenge. Don't let it go. Fight illiberalism and authoritarianism wherever you find it. Extend liberty to more parts of the world and more parts of life, and make the 21st century truly the greatest century of liberalism ever. Thank you very much for your attention.